Tipp today in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning, welcome along to Tipp Today, 1800 938 007. That's our free phone number. It won't cost you if you'd like to make a call to us. And Leanne is producing today. Coming up on the show this morning, home is where the heart is, but only if you can afford it. We'll be speaking to Auctioneer Pat Quirke in just a few moments' time. Cara Darmody has been awarded the RTE Special Category Award at the Young Scientist and Technology Exhibition. Figures show that registered marriages in Ireland have fallen by 7.7% since 2014. We'll tease that out. We'll talk to Thomas Conway about global news. Our relationships expert, Susan O'Donoghue, will be with us. And Paul has the sport, and there just might be a mention of Upper Church somewhere along the way. So all of that and more on the way. And if you'd like to text or WhatsApp, you can do so 083 311 3311, or you can email tiptoday@tippfm.com. Let's have a look at the front pages of some of your newspapers today. The Irish Daily Mail telling us about a student protester who was shot in the back of the head during the Iran regime's brutal crackdown on dissent there. Rabina Aminian, who was 23, she was killed at close range as she left college to join one of the dozens of demonstrations sweeping across the country. And there's a picture of her on the front of the Daily Mail, a very beautiful young woman with her whole life ahead of her. The Irish Times, and the lead story on the Times today: people granted refugee status will have to wait for 3 years before bringing relatives, including spouses and children, by the way, to Ireland under a planned tightening of family reunification rules. Also on the Irish Times today, an aggressive drive to tighten e-scooter laws will soon begin in light of the growing number of serious injuries being reported, including, of course, 3 fatalities last year. Also on the Times today, reading that Antashka, the conservation charity, of course, has issued a call to arms asking people to object to the government's plans to introduce unlawful, undemocratic and unfair caps on legal costs for the judicial review challenges. The Irish Independent, their lead story: more than 1,600 drivers without insurance are being caught and having vehicles seized each month as Gardaí tap into insurance databases from the roadside. So they have that kind of technology available to them now. The Irish Examiner, and they're leading with the story that continued over-reliance on corporate tax receipts from US multinationals remains one of the biggest threats to Ireland's financial stability in 2026, leaving the country in big trouble if it dries up. Economists have warned. Now, of course, they've been warning us about this for quite some time indeed. Also on the Examiner today, legal aid services in Ireland are chronically underfunded and at risk of collapse, they're telling us. And finally, there's a story on the front of the Examiner about new laws to ban sex for rent will tackle an issue that is not a once-off and has become increasingly common in Ireland's precarious housing market. Research has suggested there. So let's look at what's making headlines on front pages today. Do you want to make comment on any of that? And if you do, we'll be glad to hear from you. And once again, the text WhatsApp is 083 311 3311. Now, list prices for homes in Ireland have climbed to 41% higher than pre-COVID levels, according to a new report. The final quarterly report for 2025 from daft.ie published today shows that the average price for a house in 2025 was 7.4% higher than in 2024. And this has left many people alarmed, as you can imagine, and wondering, will they ever be able to own their own home in Ireland, or will it become a renter society? Well, Auctioneer Pat Quirke joins me in studio. Good morning to you, Pat.
Morning, Fran.
And good to see you again. And thanks very much indeed for coming in to us today. You believe, Pat, that this generation of home buyers have been failed. We now need a renewed focus on housing. They've been really failed, you figure?
Oh, very definitely. Very definitely, Fran.
Come a little closer to that for me, Pat.
Sorry, Fran. Very definitely, I feel they've been failed, and they've been failed by basically politicians from our generation. We were. When I think back to the 1970s and 1980s when we were in college, we were an activist generation, and we were all for equality and all for fair and equitable opportunity for everybody. But as I said, certainly the younger generation are very definitely finding it very, very, very hard to purchase houses.
You're in the business, Pat. What went wrong?
I think that the government stepped back and said, the free market will help things and sort things out, but it never does. The free market just looks to butter its own bread, and I think that people have been left behind. So that combined with, I think, an over-regulation on housing, like the houses that are being built today are exceptional houses. We have them for sale in Colville Woods, we have them for sale in Drumquin, we'll have new development coming in Cara, but they're exceptional houses, they're A-rated houses, even with no central heating on, they're really, really warm. Now, they don't have a fireplace, like you and I would have grown up with a fireplace in the house. They don't have that sort of, they have, really, really well-insulated houses, but the regulation is so high that the cost of construction is really, really high.
So that comparison that's always made to the 1940s and 50s when we hadn't you-know-what to pee in, that we were able to build houses at that time, but they were nowhere near the spec that's required today.
Correct.
So that's really not a fair analysis anymore, is it?
But what do you want to do? Do you want to provide people with houses, or do you want to provide a limited number of people with exceptional houses? To me, I think that the biggest problem that we face is housing for the masses, to use that term. But there's a huge number of people that are just pushed out of the housing market because of regulation and because of the cost of construction.
What needs to happen now?
Well, I think the regulations our hands are sort of quite tied in relation to the new houses, because that's a European directive to, it's carbon and et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
So that's a European directive. There are a number of things that can be done. I think in all our town centres, Clonmel being no different to anywhere else, there's a huge amount of semi-derelict overhead properties. You've shops in the town centre that probably some of them should be changed into residential anyway, but you've a lot of space which was former office space over these shops. If someone says, well, I want to redevelop this into residential, that's fine, but they have to take what is a 200-year-old building and make it effectively a span new building. And you can't do that financially. It's not easy to do.
Even though there's some funding available for that, but it's nowhere near enough, is that
nowhere near enough, because you have to bring it to an A rating, you have to have all the modern accessibility, fire, all those sort of things. Now, obviously fire is important, accessibility, yes, no. I think, again, we just have to sort of break some of these rules and provide housing, find a way to provide housing other than saying, we have to have wheelchair access to every residential unit. Those units that are over shops, they can build separate houses if they wish with wheelchair access, which all the modern houses being built at the moment have. But the old units that you want to redevelop, they don't need to have wheelchair access, because to do that you have to put in a lift.
So can we override European directives then?
Well, it's within the Irish government's remit in relation to the redevelopment of existing houses. The new houses we're sort of pretty well stuck with because of the carbon directives.
Right, so we have a choice here.
We have a choice here, yeah, but they're not making it.
And why do you think that is?
I don't know. There's a status in government. I work with a lot of people in housing in Tipperary County Council, and there's some excellent people there. There really are, and they really want to progress things. When we go through the various supports that are available for people, I'll have examples of that. But they really want to progress things, and as I said, the people certainly that I interact with are very progressive. But it seems like that the department in Dublin, for want of a term, they just seem to just tread water. The electoral cycle is too short. Nobody wants to make a big plan which is going to go into 12 years or 15 years or 20 years. They're just looking at next year, the next election. So I think what Ireland needs is a plan maybe for over 20 years to get our housing sorted out.
This target of, 300,000 houses before 2030?
Yeah. They're building 30,000 houses a year.
That's not going to happen, or anything close to it even.
Not at all. And Simon Harris was on the radio they're recently talking about, because of all the, we have so much money coming in from foreign multinationals. One of your headlines there said, if it stops, we'll be in big trouble. And that's fine. But there's huge money coming in now. And Simon Harris was talking about a rainy day fund. But the best rainy day fund is infrastructure. So if he put it into Irish Water, if he puts it into electricity, if he puts it into servicing land, well then, there's your rainy day fund.
So it's a rainy day fund, but it's raining, is
Yeah,
what
it's
you're
raining
saying.
now. Yeah, it's raining now. Thunder and lightning. Yeah.
What is available to people by way of supports?
A number of schemes. The First Home scheme is a scheme where the government will do a shared equity scheme with, say, it's for a new house. So now there's a bugbear with this with me. There are limits in this. The property ceiling price for this in Tipperary is 375,000. Now, at the start of the year, the property limit price for that was 350,000. So they put it up by 25,000 over the course of the year. But house prices have risen by 10% or more. I mean, I think they said 7.6% nationally there, but here in Tipperary by 10% or more. So if you can find a new house for sale for 375,000 or less, there's a shared equity scheme where the government can the government will pay you up to 30% of the cost of a new home. So they will own equity in the house, so that if you sell the house, they get their equity back, or over time you can buy back the equity. But for somebody who maybe has funding and a deposit to buy a house at maybe 275 or 280,000, this is a good scheme, because the government will buy the other, say 30% of the house, and they can go in and they can actually live in a house.
Right. Who can draw that down, though? First-time
buyers of a new house.
Well, just first time. So there's nothing about salaries or.
For that one there's nothing about salaries or anything. Okay. No, first-time buyers of a new house.
Okay. What else have we got, Pat?
We've got the local authority affordable purchase scheme. So again, there are salary restrictions to that, but the government, the local authority affordable purchase scheme. So what happens is the local authority applies for funding to central government. They can then designate a number of houses in a new development as being affordable. So if you're a first-time buyer, or if you're what they call a fresh start buyer, i.e. you've been through a divorce or a separation, or you've been bankrupt, but you can buy one of those houses and they will take a maximum stake of 75,000 in the property. So if your house costs 375,000, you'll pay 300. The county council will put in 75,000, and then you'll work on again. Right. Again, over time you can pay off that 75,000, or you can leave it there, and when you sell the house, they take that same proportion back.
Right. And so, as a business, have you seen this work properly?
Yes, yes, okay. I have. And that can be joined in with the First Home scheme as well. So you can get help with the deposit, and you can get help with the price. So those two things do help. I've seen, again, restricted, as I said, to first-time buyers or fresh start buyers of a new home, but again, I've seen that work. And also, we're going to launch in due course. We've applied for funding together with Tipperary County Council. We've applied for funding for a number of homes to be made available under this scheme in Colville Woods, which is on the Colville Road there. So I'm expecting that at the end of this quarter we should have maybe 8 or 10 houses on release there, and then more houses to come under this scheme.
Right, very good. What other supports, Pat?
There's mortgage and loan options, the local authority home loan. Now that's limited to a maximum value of €275,000, but again, and there are income limits on that. But the local authority, if you're refused, some people can't get a loan from a bank, so the local authority is there to give a loan if that's required. There's the local authority purchase and renovation loan, which is that'll support the purchase and renovation of vacant or derelict properties. Obviously, then there's the vacant property refurbishment grant. Again, that's managed through the county council. And if you have a house that hasn't been occupied for 2 years, or if you purchase a house that hasn't been occupied for 2 years, you can get up to 50,000 in renovation grants. Or if the property is derelict, it can be up to 75,000.
Right. Something I wasn't aware of was that ready-to-build scheme. The council make sites available. Is that what that's about?
Yeah, that's been pushed out in a number of areas, and Tipperary are starting to do that as well. It's where the council might have a land bank, and that might be close to services, and they then service that land and sell sites to individuals to at lower than market prices, but sell sites to individuals to build houses for themselves.
Right.
They're really for one-off houses rather than developments.
Many people of my generation remember the opportunity we had in council houses of actually purchasing the house. Is that still available?
That is still available, yeah. But again, it's been quite restricted now, but it is available, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else we should know about?
No, I think from an assist to buy point of view, they're the schemes that are available. If anybody has any queries or questions, they can contact us in PF Quirke and Company. We'll certainly help them through it. But Tipperary County Council, as I said, I've found them to be very proactive. They're very keen to assist people and to help people. If they can anyone can contact Tipperary County Council or contact us.
Right.
But I think it comes back to infrastructure. And we need to spend on infrastructure. At the moment, there are a number of housing developments. There are only sort of 3 housing developments underway in Clonmel, and they're the first. 2025 was the first year since 2009 that new houses were built for sale to the public in Clonmel. There have been a number of other developments in the intervening period, but they were all straight. They went straight to the council. They were built for the council. We have Torca in the Culver Road, we've Des Cooney in Drumquin, Michael Morrissey in Silver Springs, and then there are, a number of sites have been sold in recent times that will now be going through the planning process. My concern again with the planning process, and you raised it there in your headlines on Tashka, saying to people that, the government are bringing in a plan whereby the judicial review system, which has delayed huge works, both infrastructure works and residential works, throughout the country. The government is bringing in a plan to sort of restrict the ability of people to take judicial reviews, whereas Antashka want to expand that, and that again delays infrastructure. And again, it's people of a certain generation, a certain standards of living, a certain class that are blocking other people getting houses, and I just think that's wrong.
It is all about supply, isn't it? I'm just wondering, are people who would represent your organisation, for example, are you ever asked questions? Are you ever asked for your advice or your particular take on housing?
I'm a member of both IPAV and SCSI, and both organisations have made many suggestions to government. And obviously on occasion they've obviously been asked about government, by government, about various schemes. But again, I'm not sure that that there's as much focus as there should be on housing.
But that ideology that you referenced to there about the private market fixing all, that still seems to be.
Yeah, it still seems to be the case. Yeah.
Even though it's failed.
Yeah, it definitely has failed. As I said, you and I can remember the council building, well, certainly for our parents, the council built houses back in the 50s and 60s, and it was the county council themselves that built it. And those houses, like Ardnagrania, Bankeny, Griffith Avenue, all those houses are still really very, very sought after houses today. Right.
Some questions coming in. I'm not sure about how some of them might be relevant to your own portfolio, Pat, but some people are wondering about grants for the likes of solar panels, for example, and that type of thing. There are grants available.
There are, yeah. They're slightly different in that they're not assisting you to purchase a house, but the SEAI will definitely. There's plenty of grants for upgrading of houses, solar panels, insulation, new windows, doors, air to water heating systems, and that. There's plenty of grants for that. If SEAI.ie is the source for that.
Right. A couple of callers on to us to basically find out what are your thoughts on modular homes, for example. Is that an option for us going forward?
Well, I think we're in an emergency, so I think every option must be looked at. Modular homes have a place, so yes, I would think so. Where there's a severe housing need, I do think there's a go for that, and that's something that the council can manage and control and use, and people can maybe get a start in a modular home, and from there move on to another home.
And what would happen there? That it's the council's own sites, service sites, that these homes will go on. Is that?
That would be one way of looking at it. Yeah, I would think. But again, if the council can build those and control those, give housing to people, then at least people have a roof over their head. They have a job. They can save, and they can work on, again, like our parents did when they were given a council house at a low rent.
Sure. Somebody wondering about the average rent in Clonmel. What are we looking at now where rents are concerned?
Probably up around 2,000 a month now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
A 3-bed is going to be nearly 2,000 a month now. So it's it's impossible for people to save.
But how could you save and pay $2,000?
It's impossible. That's why I think that, as I say, the likes of those modular homes, they have their place.
For sure. Pat, if people want to talk to you and find out more, Pat, how can they do so?
They can call us at PF Quirke and Company in the office, 052 612 1622, Fran, or email us at pfq.ie.
All right. Great to see you, Pat, and thanks very much indeed for coming into us today. 1800 938 007. We'll take a break. Back with more in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, this year's Young Scientist and Technology competition saw more than 1,000 students present 550 projects in pursuit of over 200 prizes. Now, one of the participants was Presentation Secondary School Clonmel student and disability rights campaigner Cara Darmody from Ardfinnan, and we are delighted to report that Cara has been honoured with the RTE Special Category Award. Now, along with her dad Mark, she joins me in studio. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, Fran.
Many congratulations to you, Cara.
Thank you.
This is yet another string to your bow. Will you tell me about your project?
Absolutely. So my project was about assessing and combating the misinformation and misconceptions about autism. And I did it, basically how I conducted it was that I did online surveys using my Facebook and my social media pages in adults and teenagers, ultimately just to see how bad the misinformation about autism was. So what I did was that I put in a load of questions, like for example, like autism can be cured, which like obviously like it can't be cured, but then like there will be, I think 4% of people like are 100% certain that it could be cured. And I found after doing my surveys that there was some load of misinformation, Fran, in both teenagers and adults, and they are both equally as bad.
Am I right in thinking that the whole project was triggered by what Mr. Trump had to say about paracetamol? Did that trigger it for you?
Absolutely. Some of the misinformation that he says is absolutely crazy, and that really angered me. So that's why I decided to go to my teacher in my school, and I told her that I wanted to do a project and combat the misinformation.
And what did she say to you at that point?
She agreed with me 100%, and we decided then to do the project together. But we actually only found out that we got through about 4 or 5 weeks ago. So it was actually the day before I started my 50-hour protest was when I figured out I got through. So I was working on the project during my protest, and I had to cram it all in during Christmas. So we had like the busiest Christmas ever.
I can well imagine indeed. So you went to students and adults, is that right?
Yeah, teenage secondary school students and adults, yeah.
Right. How did you manage to get, was it about 10,000?
Yeah, I got 10,000 adults to respond to my survey because I used my Instagram, my Facebook pages, because as you know, Fran, I have a very, very loyal following, indeed. And you're one of them.
And delighted to be one of them, indeed.
Thank you, I really appreciate it. But I got a lot of people to respond to that survey, and then for the teenager survey, I did one before a video, which got 828, and then one after a video, which got 247. And the video was 5 minutes long, and it was my autism myth-busting video, which basically combated the misinformation and misconceptions about autism and then told people the facts and the right information. And I just wanted to see if like my small video as a 15-year-old teenager could make a difference, because if one person can make a difference, imagine the effect that a proper program would have. And I found it made a big difference.
But boy, did it make a difference. And just give us some of the stats on that. Maybe what people thought before they watched the video and then how they felt afterwards.
Well, like for the teenage survey, like only 49% of teenagers were like 100% certain that autism couldn't be cured. But after watching my video, it went up to 80%, which like, that's a big difference. That's like over a 60% increase. But also some of the misinformation I found even in the adult survey was unbelievable. Like 31% of adults said that they either don't know or do believe that vaccines can cause autism. Which, by the way, that was 29% for females who actually carried the baby, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And 44% were males.
You have particular fears around the misinformation where vaccines are concerned because of the good that they can do.
Absolutely, and like there's so many consequences of not getting vaccinated, and like the herd immunity rate now in Ireland is 95%, and the HC have now said that it's gone under 90%, which is quite worrying because like if there's not herd immunity there's going to be a higher risk of getting serious illnesses that could possibly lead to death. And like, it's happened before, not often, but it will get worse if the government don't do something about it.
Did you discover where the main source of information is coming from to inform people?
Well, I actually asked that question in both of my surveys, and there were so many different answers for it. And I'd say that was the most kind of, like, I got so many answers for that question in both the adults and the teenager survey, but the government and the HSE weren't dominant. Like, in the adult survey, only 20% of adults said they get their information from government or HSE sources. And then for children, it was 9%. And then an additional 10% also got their information from schools, like teenagers. Like, to think that teenagers would spend, like, 8 hours a day in school, maybe multiple hours doing homework, and only 19% of them would either get their information from school, government or HSE sources. That's very worrying. And the other answers would be like friends, family, social media. But actually I feel like because I was talking to people up there, and a lot of people who would have said that like they get their information from family members or friends, those people would get their information online on social media.
We're only going to skim through some of the top line, I suppose, of this, but it looks to me, and particularly with what Mark showed me earlier on there, it's like a thesis. I mean, is this something that you'll publish or make available to people?
Absolutely. Like, I was talking to a load of politicians up there as well, and like I met like Simon Harris, like Micheál Martin, Mary Lou MacDonald, and I told them all that like they needed to do something about this, and I'm pretty confident that in the next 6 months that there will be something done about this, and I would really like to hope so.
Yeah, I mean, they often come out and speak about misinformation and stuff, but I think it's more powerful coming from you. Did they agree with that?
Absolutely. And it was so good to meet them again, but they agreed 100% that the misinformation there is a problem. And some of them were shocked by some of the stats I showed them, especially the vaccines one, to think that 31% either don't know or do believe that vaccines can cause autism. That's not just a small percentage. Like, and for males, like, it's 44%. Like, that's almost half. Like, this is a problem, you know.
And because your two brothers are living with autism, is that hurtful to you in some way?
Absolutely, and that's another thing that motivated me, is because I know what it's like to kind of see people struggle while having autism every day, and like I know that, like, for example, like my brother's, like, vaccines didn't cause autism in them, and hearing misinformation like that all of the time, it really triggers me and it makes me really angry. But I just decided, instead of feeling sorry for myself and getting upset, that I would just try and do something about it and try and help other people as well, just to combat the misinformation out there.
Well, if I know you now, I know that this isn't going to stop here either, where the misinformation, as you see it, is concerned. Are you going to continue this?
Absolutely, and I'm not going to stop anytime soon. As you know, Fran, I never stop, so all I'll say is don't expect me to be gone after this, because I'll be back.
Well, we would never expect you to be gone, that's for sure. Mark, you showed me, and I can only describe it as a thesis, really. It's a remarkable piece of work, isn't it?
It's about 130 something pages
123,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, can I first of all say big thanks to our teacher, Tracy O'Leary, unbelievable, and to the presentation, secondary school. Like, this went on over Christmas, but Tracy was involved the whole way. Like, it ruined Tracy's Christmas as well. As Cara said, like, I mean, she literally got the wild card to enter. They gave out those the night before her protest. So I was sitting in the hotel and I get this phone call, and like I just thought at that moment, we just dealt with all the media aspect for her protest. I thought, it can't get worse now. I have it all done. And next minute, she's got through to the finals. And I knew at that moment it was going to take up like weeks of 16-hour days to get this done, because it's too much, Fran. You can see it there. There's just the project, she needed 6 months to do it.
Yes.
But when she got through then at the last minute, more or less, so she took on this. And
but because you're discussing the likes of vaccines and misinformation, the quality of the research, of course, has to be impeccable, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, I suppose if you have the Sunday or the Irish Indo there, like any national survey would have 1,000 people. That gives you a margin of error of about 3%. So 1,000 is the golden standard. Cara said she'd do 10,000 so that she'd make it absolute. So the Taoiseach was shocked when he saw the amount of people, because you can always talk away a survey, say, oh, maybe it's just Tipp people, or maybe it's Munster, but 10,000 on a campaigner's page that's national all over the country, there was a little bit of shock. They were genuinely interested. Like, I mean, when Simon Harris sat down with her, I'd say he was there for 20 minutes. Like he really wanted to know the nitty gritty. He took away a copy with him. He wanted it forwarded this morning, which I'll do to him. But yeah, they were genuinely taken aback because the Taoiseach had said that they did have this issue 20 years ago with that Dr. Wakefield.
Oh,
at the
yes,
time. Yeah,
yes, it is, yeah.
So he said, we did have to combat it before. So now times have changed with social media. So he agreed that Cara's recommendations are for national media campaigns. And there was a great laugh when Cara said to him, and if you need someone to do it, I'm available, like that. But yeah, they really took it serious. But you could tell, because the recommendations are actually quite simple.
Yes.
That, you know, just like national, you know, advertising campaigns about this. So it's not a technical ask, it's not a scientific ask. So while the project is scientific, the asks are actually quite simple.
I was a bit amused, I must say, at the coverage that Cara got, maybe to the detriment of the others who might have won places as well. She got a remarkable amount of coverage out of this as well, didn't she?
To be honest, I actually didn't see it, Frank.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
people were saying that they saw our photo in the
Just
national
everywhere.
papers.
Yeah,
and all.
yeah.
Well, look, the second we arrived, the photographers had our cop straight away, so
Yeah.
so they do. But it's actually, I'll just tell you a very, very quick funny story. She was in Penny's with her mum yesterday, and this young little girl pointed over and said, "Ma'am, it's that famous person," because Cara has been all over the social
Yes,
media.
yeah.
And her mum said, "Who? Where?" Like this, and she said, "That scientist." And I thought, of all the things Cara is known for, being a scientist would not be one. But the little girl had obviously been shown some young scientist
amazing,
pictures,
yeah.
and she thought that was a scientist.
Yeah. Sometimes we're all a bit depressed, Cara, and a bit sort of pessimistic about the country and the future of the country. But I mean, that's a remarkable event to see all that talent in that one area, isn't it?
Yeah, it was amazing, and like there were hundreds of projects, and like the like geniuses that I met there, like it was actually such an amazing experience, and like I can't wait to try and go for it again next year, because I really want to go up there again. I'm already missing it, even though it's only over 2 days.
Right,
like it
so-
was actually so good.
And can you spill the beans and tell us what you might look at next time round?
I'll keep it kind of secret for now.
I knew you
but,
were going to say that. But you
when
have an idea.
Yeah, I do. But when I decide to announce it, you'll be the first person to know.
Well, I'll keep to that. What else is on the cards, Cara? What else are you looking to know over the next few months? Or
Well, I mean, like, you know, I am in third year now, and I have my junior cert coming up, so I'm gonna, like, my mocks are in like less than a month.
are they indeed?
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to really like clock in for that. So, but also I just hope to kind of keep along with my advocacy on the side as well, and just keep making progress on that. But
Yeah,
I have a feeling junior cert now is gonna take over for a while.
just for a little while anyway. And on the advocacy and all of that, Mark, is there anything fresh? Is there anything we should know?
Yeah, well, look, I suppose the one thing is this, I have to say, she was very careful not to bring it in the door, because it's the Young Scientists exhibition. Stripe are running that, and if she was doorstepping politicians, she would have been in trouble. Well, she'll never get in the door again. It's kind of a fine line. To be fair, Simon Harris brought it up, and he said that he had considered her proposals, and that he felt that a national recruitment campaign was the way to go. So he wants to follow up on that. So he brought it up, not us. So we were delighted to
but
hear
how
that.
slow are
I
they,
know.
Mark?
Sure, look,
really, you know?
We'll be hopefully getting a meeting with Bernard Loster in the next couple of weeks, but it's just painfully slow. I mean, these are things that could and should be done quite quickly, but look, Fran, we're well used to it now. Everything moves at snail's pace, you know, and but sure, look, she's not going to go away, they know that. But they were actually, I have to say this, they were delighted, though, Mary Lou as well, to meet Cara in a different setting.
Yes, yeah,
like, she got hugs, they were kind of delighted that she wasn't going to be using lawbreakers and all, you know, but it was so nice. And even she was chatting to the Taoiseach about his Christmas and his kids.
Okay,
And he was talking about them. So, you know, sometimes there's a human element to this, and it was nice. They enjoyed the crack as well.
And that's important too, yeah. Loads of people say to me, Cara, that I never ask you about your own future. Now, I thought I did, but one lady met me in the supermarket and said, why don't you ask Cara what's she going to do? Is she going to become a politician? I thought we did speak about it, but just for clarity, have you an idea what it is you want to do after college or in college? Or
Well, like, I'm only 15, so I haven't made my full mind up on it. I definitely want to be a person that does good things and is always kind of contributing in like the positive things of life, and whether that's like being the president or like being a window cleaner. I think as long as I'm doing good things every day and trying to help as many people and help the world in every way possible, I'll be happy.
Do you think, though, that with all you know about politics at this stage, that somebody like yourself who tends to be a little impatient, would politics be too slow for you, do you think? Would you get annoyed with the way it works if you're inside?
As much as I love politics, I don't know if a politician would be my first job, because I think I'd go for the job that would like allow me to help as many people as possible.
Right.
You know?
Okay. Right. Well,
whatever that job will be, it may be destined to find me someday.
Well, to the lady who met me and gave out to me in Centra, I hope that satisfies her anyway. Look, many congratulations to you. We're going to take a photograph of the award and put it up on our social media, if that's okay, because you have it here with you, and it's most impressive. How did that work, by the way, the whole RTE aspect to that, Mark? Well,
yeah, so RTE are one of the huge sponsors.
Yes.
So that there's others.
And they get to choose then.
They get then basically to choose. So yeah there's like the amount of judging that goes on over the 4 days. It's kind of intimidating, frightening. It's brilliant though, and you get to meet so many people. And then decision time comes on the Friday evening, and the huge ceremony where they have about 1,000 people in there. And yeah, it's just, she felt like the run to the litter, because we were one of the about 40 who got the wild cards, and you kind of know there's so much she could have done better in the project as well. She knows that, but to get an award was just huge, because normally, Fran, and you know, I just say this, people have high expectations of Cara, but up there wasn't. It was like the whole place is geniuses. To get in the door of that competition is literally a win in itself.
All right,
because the competition. So yeah, it was just a great achievement for her.
We're so proud of you. Well done, Cara, and many congratulations. Lots of our listeners getting on to congratulate you, as you can imagine, as well. Thanks, Mark, and we look forward. We look forward to the next chapter.
Me too. Thank
All
you.
Right, thank you very much indeed. We'll take a break. Back with more.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007.
Now, the top of the programme this morning, I spoke with Auctioneer Pat Quirke about the housing situation in Clonmel, Tipperary and beyond. And Councillor Shamie Morris was in touch and joins me now. Good morning to you, Shamie.
Good morning, Fran.
Good to talk to you today. You had to deal with two particularly difficult cases since Christmas on housing, Shamie.
Yeah, I had, Fran. I'm dealing with two ladies, and they have two children each. One of them is in a battered wives home, and the other is a working woman that is in emergency accommodation. Both of them are in emergency accommodation, and we just cannot find any place for them, because emergency accommodation obviously is for should be short term, but it's becoming long term. And I've had another call this morning actually for someone looking for a place in an emergency, and they're just not out there, friend. And we look, it's happening all over the place, and I know the staff are completely stressed out in there. In the council offices, and I'd ask people to be patient with them. It's not their fault, but there is a lot of tension out there in housing, Fran.
Yeah, I mean, it is the big issue of our generation. I'm just not convinced that we have any vision to sort this, Shamie.
We haven't got the houses, we can't sort it, Fran. It's as simple as that. Nina is particularly bad because, of course, our friends this year, and we're supposed to have finished the wastewater treatment plant in Nina by 2024, and they're only starting now, and it's a 3-year project. So we can't even build. Look, there is 67 houses being built in Nina. I'm not going to say there isn't some hope down the line, and they're kind of half built at the moment. So that would be a massive help to us. But the housing in general is complete and utter mess. And I will also say this, Fran. The housing staff are understaffed in Tipperary County Council. Planning staff are understaffed. That's a huge problem as well, and it goes back to funding of local authorities. And I mean, we had this discussion coming up to Christmas. We'll have it today at the council meeting, and funding for local government is completely out of kilter with what needs, what we should have, and it's reflecting on. I'll give an example. There was houses in Springford Meadows. I'd say there were 6 weeks waiting to be inspected. They were finished. There were probably 6 weeks waiting to be inspected before we could actually allocate them. That's not good enough.
And to a lot of people I speak to outside of the programme, they feel that the focus of the government is on everything except the issues similar to what we're talking about now.
Yeah, look, Fran, I think we're all reading stuff over the weekend of the inability of people to build houses because of the lack of infrastructure. I mean, we have a perfect example in Enna. We have ones of 1,000 houses in Enna being held up at the moment because of lack of infrastructure. You have lack of infrastructure in Ballycommon. There's houses being held up in Ballycommon. There's houses being held up in the Silver Mines, Clough-Sheridan, all because of lack of wastewater capacity. And then you have the ridiculous situation where the government now have decided to start building data centres and give planning permissions for data centres in Dublin, when the electricity grid is completely and utterly blocked. So you can't build. I'd say there's tens of thousands of houses being held up in Dublin because of an inability to connect to electricity. So what we have here is a lack of forward planning, and that goes down to the government. John Collison recently said it. He was dead right. It's a lack of forward planning that we have in this country, and that's down to the government.
And, of course, the whole business then of the Shannon pipeline is emerging again with what Jerry Grant, the chair of the of Board Ishcairn, had to say about the drinking water situation in Dublin. So this is back on the map again. Huge project that's going to cost mega bucks.
You had a legend on with you there before me, Cara Darmody. She's preparing for the Intercerts. I'm preparing for a submission to Umbor Penala because Ishcairn have hundreds of consultants working with them to put in a submission or an application for this project. And yes, not one county council, not Tipperary, Clare or Limerick have themselves ready for this submission, have themselves ready for what's coming at them. I put a team together over the Christmas, and thankfully I have ecologists, environmentalists, philanthropists, engineers, all sorts of people have reached out to help with me putting in a submission, or the Shannon Protection Line putting in a submission in a couple of weeks' time. But what are the county councils doing? I'm going to give you one prime example of. Ishcairn keep telling us that they're only taking 2% of the water. Who's ever challenged them in that? 2% of what? I mean, we've done figures over the last couple of weeks, and we note that at low tides coming into Limerick, they'll be taking up to 40% of the water. That's unsustainable, friend. But yet, not.
And where are you getting that data from?
We've been working with engineers and ecologists over the Christmas, Fran. Actually, those figures are out there. Obviously, DSB hold the data for what water goes down into Limerick, and they control it, so they have the figures, and we've done the figures from their figures that up to 40% of the water at low tide will be taken at any one time. And I mean, come here, I shouldn't be doing this, Fred. I mean, I have worked with county councillors in Limerick. They're calling an emergency meeting on this, because none of the councils seem to be prepared for this. Can you imagine, Frank? We're talking about the lack of infrastructure. We have a God-given natural infrastructure, which is the River Shannon and Lough Derg, and not one county council in the area is ready for what is, to me, ecocide, which is about to be committed onto us in the Midwest here, where the water that has been God given to us is there. It's about to be taken unnecessarily to come to Dublin. Even the River Slaney Trust have put in a submission because they said most of this water will end up in the River Liffey Trust have put in a submission because they said most of the water that will be pumped from the Midwest will end up in the River Liffey because it'll leak into it.
And that lack of appetite of getting involved from the local authority point of view, is that because there's a general belief that this is never going to happen? I mean, even Jerry Grant himself says that it's very unlikely that the Shannon project will get planning permission within the next 3 years, for example.
Do you know what? I think you're right. I actually said it to a county councillor in Limerick one time, and he says to me, "Geez, I thought that was gone away." So that's the lack of belief about it. But Fran, it has statutory status in the National Development Plan. It's gone in for planning permission now. It is reality now. So people better get their act together. And I'm appealing to people, particularly people in the tourism industry, to reach out to me, to contact me, because believe you me, this will drain the Shannon. And, that might seem like an amazing thing to say, but unless we get ourselves ready to put in a proper submission that is data-driven, Ishka are not going to get this over the line.
What's the latest on the cost of that project, by the way? Because I know it started off at just over a billion. What is it estimated to be now?
Fran, it started off at 700 million, would you believe? And now they've been given a 10 billion euro pot to spend on this. So can you imagine the amount of consultants that I'll be taking on over the next couple of months, the next month or so? These people are lining up to provide their own data so that they can get their hands on that 10 billion. It won't stop at 10 billion, Fran. If the Children's Hospital has to stop at 2 billion, projects in Ireland, have an ability to go off the Richter scale when it comes to funding. But they've been actually given a 10 billion pot to pump water, 330 million litres of treated water a day to leak into the ground in Dublin. Can you imagine the lunacy of that? But still, we've got, I'd say there's over 150 million spent in this already. And
speaking of spend, I'm kind of confused about that deal that was struck, Shamie, with the farmers and the landowners. That average of, what was it, 100 grand, was it, at the time in compensation? Where is that deal now? Is that a reality?
I'm about to challenge that as well, Fran. I have a person in Dublin willing to challenge it. She will help any farmers that want to challenge it. First of all, Fran, there's a CPO bid after being put on people's land for a project that hasn't got planning permission and hasn't even got a water abstraction licence. So, they're already handing out, offered up to 100 grand to landowners for land for a project that hasn't got planning permission nor has it an abstraction licence. What sort of a country have we, friend? Do we not learn from our mistakes in this country? Can we not put the money into building up the infrastructure that we need, the wastewater infrastructure, the water infrastructure, the energy infrastructure? Can we not spend the money on something that's needed, not something that's not needed?
And can I just be devil's advocate finally to you and say that, what is being said, that growing population, huge growth we're going to see over the next few years, particularly in Dublin. If this doesn't happen, they're telling us there is no other option as far as Ishgairn is concerned. They're telling us if this doesn't happen, the city is going to grind to a halt.
They're telling us that for 20 years, friend, and the city hasn't grown to a halt. Half the houses in the country have been built in Dublin and the east at the moment. They keep telling us that, but where's the proof to that? I mean, friend, if you flew a drone over Dublin, you'd see it's surrounded by water. They have, obviously, in tin pot dictatorships in Africa, they're desalinating water. In all over the Middle East, they're desalinating water.
But they assure us they looked into that and they figure that in the situation of Dublin, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't be efficient and wouldn't work.
Who has challenged that, friend? Has anyone challenged that? I mean, also, Dublin is sitting on a huge water supply.
Yeah.
It also has the river Seine. But also, friend, there's a massive amount of water being held in Poulafoca for a small amount of energy that's not being used for Dublin. So, there are massive alternatives there. So
what is this about then, Shamie? What is this about?
I've always said, friend, when the consultants get their hands on something, they're the new gods in this country. Everything becomes consultant driven, and because money is spent, they're afraid to take them on. It's time now that we put the Midwest, the needs of the Midwest. Why are our councils not standing up to this? Because county councillors, executives and managers end up as consultants, friend. This is a consultant-driven project. And any project that's consultant-driven is almost they have a God-given right to energy. But listen, come here, I'm going to tell you now that this thing will be fought the whole way to Europe, because where they're taking the water from is protected by 2 European directives. It is probably one of the most environmentally sensitive areas of the country. They will, I'm telling this guy now, stop this lunacy, spend the money on projects that are needed, because they're going to face massive opposition to this. And again, I'm calling to people, even out in Ashley Park in our Crony there, which is well known for weddings and all the rest of it. The pipe is actually going under Ashley Park, which is a turlock, which could actually drain Ashley Park. That's just a small incident of what could happen. This would cause massive environmental problems for the Midwest. This is lunacy, and it's time for it to stop.
Thanks for your time this morning, Shamie. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Councillor Shamie Morris speaking to us there. 1800 938 007. News and information is coming up.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back to Tip Today. Now, last month it was announced that the Thurles bypass will be included in the National Development Plan. Alongside this, it was revealed that the Inner Relief Road will begin construction in 2026. Now, archaeologist Donald O'Regan was on to us about this and joins me now. Donald, good morning to you.
Good morning, Fran. How are you?
I'm well, and thank you indeed for coming on with us today. You've concerns about this, Donald.
Yeah, I'm concerned. While the relief road is good in principle, and we need to kind of have some kind of cohesion in traffic in Thurles, my concern is that the area could be rich in archaeology, and there's a need for archaeological monitoring and possibly even major excavation in advance. And it's not obvious this is going to happen. Now, it may do, but I'm calling on the local representatives who are involved in organising this Inner Relief Road and the work there to ensure that archaeologists are on the site in advance and that perfect monitoring takes place and that no opportunity is lost to monitor our rich archaeology, especially around the Mill Road, which is an area full of history, full of archaeology, much beloved of the Dennis of Justin support. And again, I ask that archaeology be put to the forefront of this so that no opportunity is lost to lose out.
I was of the idea that it's a given that there would be an archaeological look at an area, at the very least, examination of an area before works would get underway.
That should be the case, but I have seen areas in the past where shortcuts have been taken and where building work is taken. It's not just motorways or Inner Relief Road, it's house building generally, forestry, quarrying, bungalow building. Any time you disturb the soil, you need to have an archaeologist on site to strip the soil systematically to make sure that if there is anything there, that it will be discovered and that we don't lose this opportunity to understand our heritage and our past.
If I could be a little bit facetious and say to you, if I'm sitting on my ass in traffic for an hour in the middle of Thurles, do I really care about what's beneath the soil if I could have a relief road or a bypass?
Well, the relief road and the bypass will probably go ahead anyway. It's just a matter of timing and the need for understanding our past is very great. Heritage is very important to the Irish people. Tourism is linked to heritage. We have a service industry in Thurles. We have hotels, B&B and so on. And that all relies on people coming in to explore our past, people coming to see the work of Cash and Holy Cross Abbey and so on. And this will enhance our understanding of our past and understanding our heritage in general.
The big fear, of course, is that if items are discovered, it will hold up a process that has already been held up for about 14 or 15 years at this point.
It's a relatively short delay, and it is worth the delay in my view in terms of what we might find and discover, and what might be there beneath the soil, especially here on the Mill Road, which is so rich in archaeology, potentially, as there's known to be archaeology. As I say, there may already be a plan in progress to have excavations there, but I'm just making sure that goes ahead, and I'm calling in all the local representatives in North Tipperary and in the county to make sure that there is archaeological monitoring, our archaeological site, and that there is an understanding of our history and our past.
I had a look at the various emails that we received about this. Now, so far, I could find no mention of an archaeological dig or examination of this, but it might be in details somewhere else. I just don't know.
That's the difference. I know up on the south side entrance of Turles, there's a housing development there, and that went ahead a number of years ago. It's not missed the mind on it. There's no archaeological monitoring, and it could be anything at all there. So we can't be taking shortcuts where our heritage is concerned, where our past is concerned, and where our future understanding of our heritage is concerned. But every time we lose something, we lose it irreparably. There is no going back in it. As when we have monitoring and, if necessary, excavation, then we have that appreciation and understanding.
And as an archaeologist, you speak about the importance, particularly of the Mill Road area. What would you expect to find in an area like that, Donald?
Well, you could find something like Turles is a medieval town largely with the butcher before that, the focuses, and you can find any amount of prehistoric or medieval settlement there. You can find medieval hut sites, even Bronze Age, Neolithic hut sites, burials, anything at all. It's difficult to say in advance as to what we do. I know a friend of mine about 25 years ago was digging on the Castle bypass, and nothing turned up for a long time, and suddenly out of the blue, an early bronze Sophia, one of the biggest in the country, was discovered, and that would have been lost had there been no archaeological excavation. So we do find stuff. Up by Kaplan near Ross Gray, archaeologists monitored that soil there about 10 years ago, and a lot of stuff turned up. So it's not as if the data isn't there. It's a matter of effective data retrieval that makes it all worthwhile.
Well, it's very interesting, and we'll see if we can find out more on this and whether there is some form of plan in place. But Donald, in the meantime, great to talk to you, and thank you for your time today. That's archaeologist Donald O'Regan speaking to us there. We'll take a break, and we're back with global news in just a few moments.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tiptoday@tipfm.com.
Now it's time to have a look at what's happening globally, and glad to be joined as usual by Thomas Conway of the Nina Guardian. Good morning to you, Thomas.
Good morning, Fran.
Good to see you today. Well, we have a look at what's happening in Iran, and again, it's rather worrying there. I think, is it up to about 500 people dead?
It's 500, but that is almost certainly an underestimate. I mean, we don't know the true scale or the true degree of the protest there, largely because the Iranian regime have imposed an internet blackout, which has cut off all communications, not just with the outside world, but internally within Iran. But certainly the number quoted by human rights agencies is in excess of 500 now, and that is likely to rise, and it is likely an underestimate.
These protests, every few years they sort of emerge in Iran. What's different about this one?
They seem to crop up. A couple of years ago, people will remember the Masa Amini protests in response to the death of a young woman in custody. This time it was the Iranian economy is essentially in the doldrums. The rial, the currency, had effectively collapsed. Shop owners were hoarding goods. I think there was genuine deprivation from the reports I've seen within the country. It led to a protest, first among shopkeepers. It then spread and spiralled, and it's turned into a kind of a mass set of demonstrations against the Iranian theocratic regime, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and the senior clerics in the regime. The question is, will it be large enough to topple the regime? I mean, that would be a monumental moment. It's been in place since the revolution in 1979. And then there is a question as to what might succeed it. So if we are looking at regime change, the demonstrations are currently leaderless. That is one thing to note. The protests, they're not being led by a senior figurehead as such, and I think that's significant, because often you need somebody. We saw with Syria, you had al-Shara, who led kind of the movement and eventually became leader. That doesn't seem to be the case in Iran, at least not that I understand.
What about the Shah's grandson? Is that?
Yeah, Reza Pahlavi. He's currently ensconced in Washington. The Shah was essentially, the Shah is the Persian word for monarch.
Yes.
He was the monarch of Iran, reigned from the Shah dynasty, or the Pahlavi dynasty reigned from the 1920s up to the revolution in 1979. Reza Pahlavi is the son of the last Shah. And he has kind of signalled in recent days that he would be up for leading a movement. Now, I think there is some appetite within the country. I think all he would be is an interim leader. I mean, it would effectively be
as they move to a democratic process.
I suppose that would be the plan. He would have American backing. I think he is set to meet with President Trump this week. I know President Trump has a meeting with senior White House advisors tomorrow in relation to maybe launching a strike. And that would be very interesting. The interesting thing to see here, to observe, will be how America acts. I mean, it has a number of different options. President Trump says he's been briefed on the options by his national security team. They range to everything from a full-out military strike to maybe some kind of cyber attack in which the Americans restore the internet to the Iranian citizens. Now, I would imagine that would be quite complex, but it might give us a picture of the true scale of what is happening inside.
Yeah, it's a strange one. My understanding is Iran wouldn't exactly have friends anywhere, really, except maybe, is there a Russian influence there?
Yeah, I think they trade. I think there is an economic relationship between Iran and Russia. China would have maybe tacitly supported Iran in the past, but for years it has been known as a rogue state, both within the Middle East and
with
globally.
Israel being the arch enemy.
Israel is the arch enemy, but I mean, relations with other countries in the Middle East are not good either. Saudi Arabia, there is a rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Iran obviously sponsors proxies, i.e. Hezbollah and Hamas in different parts of the Middle East, and they have been significantly weakened by Israel. And of course the regime itself in Iran was weakened by those strikes last year, those joint American-Israeli strikes. So you're right to say Iran has very few friends, and you can see the chorus, the international chorus of leaders coming out and condemning the repression of protesters. A lot of them, I think, very clearly enough signalling that regime change would be no harm, or regime change might be in Iran's interests.
I'm just thinking, I mean, if Donald Trump does take on this, I mean, he's taking on so much stuff on so many different fronts,
Yeah, it's quite remarkable, and you could argue, I mean, where does this fit with the America First, the MAGA agenda?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing swiping Maduro from Venezuela, that's in his own backyard, but the Middle East is not a theatre that the US has enjoyed over the past few decades, and there's the threat of getting into forever wars, and there's the threat of what might happen if the regime did fall. But I kind of feel, I have an instinct here that Trump will launch some sort of strike. I think he will find it irresistible, and there are a lot of senior Republican warhawks in Congress with a lot of antipathy or resentment for Iran. I mean, Lindsey Graham, the Alabama senator, came out with a statement yesterday, or a post on X, saying as much. So I think he will find it very, very tempting, and it is a tempting choice that's before him. It could happen in the next 24 hours. You just do not know.
It's frightening stuff, isn't it? You mentioned Israel. Let's talk about Benjamin Netanyahu, because, of course, he will lead his party into a general election. Is it the 12th?
Yeah, it is. He spent over 18 years in office. This will be the 12th time this year. He could become the longest-serving leader of any democracy in since the Second World War. So that just outlines how long Netanyahu has been around. He's 76, and the reason I put this in was on Friday he did an interview, and he doesn't do many interviews with the international press. He did an interview with The Economist. Now, he didn't give away much, but he was a little bit more restrained than the usual Netanyahu that we've grown accustomed to over the past years. Now, obviously, he derided, the international media, dismissed concerns over Israeli actions in Gaza and said Israel had to strike and so on and so forth. But he was rather muted when he was asked about Iran and America. He said Israel would strike back if there was a direct strike on the country from Iran. And going back, that is a consideration that Donald Trump will have to ponder over. If he does strike, if America does strike, Iran may not strike America back directly. They may go for Israel, their senior ally, instead. So, that is a consideration.
And that's what makes it all so bloody dangerous, I suppose. Where's Netanyahu in the polls along with his coalition? Where is he?
Yeah, so he currently leads. His government is touching towards the far right of the political spectrum at the moment, and that's where he stands. But he needs the support of a couple of hard right parties, essentially, to stay in power. And when the next election comes, he will rely on those parties. His main rival is a guy called Yair Lapid, who's the head of the opposition. But there has been kind of a unified, there has been criticism of Netanyahu over the past few years, but there's been a largely unified, there's been a government essentially of national unity set up to facilitate the war because Israel was in a war mode. Now, there are serious questions there, questions that haven't been asked, particularly about October 7th and how it occurred. And
the security failure
the security failure, and to what degree Netanyahu was responsible. And I think ultimately the next election would hinge on whether people are willing to ignore that. I mean, it was probably one of the greatest catastrophes in Israeli history, that security breach.
And everybody thought that the moment there was a ceasefire, that the attention would turn to that issue. It hasn't quite.
No, it hasn't. I mean, Gaza has not been, and there was deaths of Palestinians over the past few days. I know on international news sites, but there has been sporadic outbreaks of violence since the ceasefire was announced. There still hasn't been a move to the so-called phase 2 of the plan, which would see Israel essentially withdraw from the area of the Strip it currently occupies, and an international force would be inserted in to facilitate essentially a transition. Now, Hamas on their side have not de-armed, which is not helping the situation. It's unlikely they will surrender their arms. So that situation in Gaza seems to have remained static. And that's not benefiting anybody, because I know Palestinians are living in extremely harsh conditions. We know food is not plentiful there. There was outright famine. I think the situation has improved since that time, but it's certainly, there's no quality of life there. I'm not sure has education been restarted and things like that. So a lot of people are losing out. But certainly, it's a question. I mean, Netanyahu is 76. I think if he does serve another term, it will be his last.
I thought there was one thing that was really, really telling, though, Thomas, and I'd love your view on it. I mean, when he spoke about potential Arab partners, for example, he referred to private conversations, and he said if you want the truth, he said many of them don't give a hoot. They don't care about Palestine or Palestinian issues.
They care about its effect on the street, to finish that quote. So what he's saying there, and I think that's astonishing, and that would be very disheartening for a lot of Palestinians.
Remarkable statement, yeah.
It might explain to a degree the fact that the Arab states did not step in sooner when the war in Gaza was ongoing. But what he's saying essentially is that, their populations might care, the populations of places like Saudi Arabia, but the leaders don't really. They're in it for the economic benefits of our relationship with Israel.
Even the huge amount of people who have died in this, they don't care.
Yeah, now, to what extent you can trust Netanyahu's words is obviously, people can make their own judgment, but he hasn't exactly been very fruitful in the past. But certainly, that is, it's a bit of a revelation to make, and I would take it with a large grain of salt. But
right along the way, there's been discussion around whether or not Palestine gets support or is supported by other Arab nations.
Yeah, indeed. And I suppose you had the thing called the Abraham Accords, which was essentially an economic agreement. It offered economic benefits to Arab countries for, I suppose, maintaining an economic relationship with Israel, and there was talks of expanding them. But the Palestinian issue is not going away, and the prospect of a two-state solution seems to be honest, it seems more distant than ever at this point. And I think the longer Netanyahu stays in power, the more distant it will remain.
We alluded to this earlier on, but Trump's territorial ambition at this point. Where are we now with that?
It's a good question. I mean, I think his attention has been diverted to Iran over the weekend, but that didn't stop him in one of his typical Trump press conferences on Friday night. I was watching it. He was greeting oil executives in the White House. He took questions for about an hour. And he said everything from, he reiterated his threat that we have to take Greenland one way or another. We have to take it. And that signals a seriousness on behalf of the US. And I think the world has woken up now after the capture of Maduro to the fact that Trump is very willing to make these moves, and he just sees no barriers. And he doesn't see the ramifications that a potential annexation of Greenland would have for NATO, for Europe, for the transatlantic alliance, which many would argue is already dead. I think, what Trump does, his general strategy is to go in hard and then roll back from there. I think what we might see unfold with Greenland, I don't think they will annex it. I think we might see an enhanced US military presence on the island, and it's the world's largest island. There's supposed to be talks between the Greenlandic governmental team, their Prime Minister Jens Frederick Nielsen, and the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio today. One key thing in that is the involvement of Denmark. To what extent the Danish government, Denmark obviously owns Greenland rather. To what extent they will be involved? Because from what I've seen, the Greenlandic government seem to kind of have been shutting out Greenland. They don't really like Greenland. They're all for their own independence, which is fair enough. But I would argue they kind of need Danish backing here.
The other NATO countries, what are they saying about this?
Well, they issued a statement last week in support, a defiant statement in support of Greenland and Greenlandic sovereignty. And I suppose there are other episodes. Macron visited a couple of months ago, and they've consistently reiterated their support. But I mean, there's no question who the superpower is here.
But is the ridiculous scenario a possibility that you would have NATO countries protecting Greenland from a NATO member?
Yeah, I think we're actually reaching that point, which is downright remarkable. And the NATO clause, Article 5 of one of NATO's foundational treaties says, an attack on one is an attack on all. But it never envisaged a situation like this where a fellow member might threaten military action on another member. So that, I mean, it's a remarkable state of affairs we've fallen into. But such is the reality of the world we're living in and what Trump has done. I mean, he has, it's a whole new ball game now, both for the EU, and it'll be interesting to see how the EU plays this one.
So these empires then that's being referred to, are we talking about America, Russia, and China? Is that?
Yeah, realistically,
this trilogy of
that's the triad. America, with its kind of its sphere of influence extending from the country itself across the Americas up to perhaps Greenland in the near future, and then Russia. It's obviously eroding Ukraine, and China has sway over vast swathes of Asia. And each of the leaders, and I pointed this out on Friday, is kind of they're aging men. They each are, I think, looking at their legacy. They want to cement their legacy here. And so this is, I think, a consideration for Mr. Trump in his rhetoric when he goes about reshaping the Western Hemisphere, as he calls it. It's also a consideration for Vladimir Putin and the reason why he launched his war in Ukraine, and Xi Jinping and the prospect of military action on Taiwan. So all of them are looking to kind of make their nations
to expand.
Territorial expansion is a key tenet of kind of the ideology they're pushing here, and there are men behind them. I mean, it's not just the men themselves. Chief people in the Trump administration mentioned on Friday Stephen Miller. He's an ideologue who kind of who looks at that territorial expansion, and then you've senior people around Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping as well who would think similarly. But it's an age of empires. It's America, China, and Russia, and I think Europe's role is diminishing significantly.
It's scary stuff indeed. In other news, just before we wrap up then, that awful incident with the immigration officer who shot what was her name?
Renee Nicole Good. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
shocking incident in Minneapolis. And if anyone has seen the footage, I mean, to me, she did very little wrong. Like, it certainly did not merit being shot dead, what she was doing. You know, I mean, she might have been agitating, she might have been protesting, and that might all be true. But that doesn't mean you go and shoot someone dead. The Department of Homeland Security has cast her as a left-wing terrorist, and Trump reiterated that viewpoint at the press conference on Friday night. The White House said the viewers could draw their own conclusions, but it is a shocking situation, and there are protests across the United States, but I suppose the international agenda has kind of usurped this, or the international news has kind of usurped this in the news agenda in recent weeks. As well as that, I included in our news pieces a piece from Pope Leo XIV.
Yeah.
War is back in vogue, he said in his State of the World address. This is an annual address akin to the State of the Union address delivered by the US President, but it was an address to his diplomatic envoys last week. The American-born pontiff expressed fear that the zeal for war was spreading and condemned the weakening of multilateralism. Now, that is a very direct critique, I think, of Donald Trump. And significantly, he made the address in English.
Yes.
You know, and he doesn't usually speak in English. He usually goes for Italian.
So this was direct.
This was a direct rebuke of Donald Trump, yeah, from the new Pope. And considering that, you know, many of Trump's supporters are Christians, many of them evangelicals, but there will be Catholics too, it will not have gone unnoticed by the White House, I would imagine.
The what happened in Switzerland with that how many people? 40 people died in the fire
people
there,
killed in the New
yeah.
Year's celebration.
Yeah.
The co-owner of the bar venue in which the inferno took place, Jacques Moretti, was arrested and held in custody after being being questioned by prosecutors on Friday morning. Switzerland held a national day of mourning. I mean, again, this has gone down the news agenda, but it was absolutely shocking to have 40 people killed, and it raises key questions. I also saw that it raises questions around governance and safety standards in Switzerland. Switzerland has a very kind of curious political system. Power is devolved out to essentially the provinces. They're called cantons, and they set their own regulations, etc., etc. So there's questions around that, and to what degree, to what role that played in the fire. I think the venue hadn't been inspected for a number of years, but it's a however it happened and whoever was responsible, and there probably were people responsible, but it's a shocking tragedy.
Absolutely dreadful indeed, and of course you can't help but hark back to our own awful tragedy
the Stardust,
all those years ago at the Stardust. What are you looking to this week? Well, I'll tell you, look into your crystal ball. Next Monday morning when you and I talk, what are we going to be talking about, do you think?
I think America will strike Iran in some way.
You really believe that?
I think they will. I think he's being briefed. I think there is... If I was, the US administration looking at this will see an irresistible opportunity to topple an ailing Iranian theocratic regime there, a regime that they've resented for decades and decades. And I think if they can do anything, regime change or revolution is best done from the inside. But if they can do anything to gently or maybe more aggressively push the protesters and aid them in their quest, I think Mr. Trump will do it, and I think he feels emboldened by what happened in Venezuela. So,
yeah, and just finally, Iran's nuclear capability would be what?
Yeah, well, the US said it was destroyed by those strikes last year. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think they're probably
deep in the mountains there.
Yeah, building up reserves again, and I suppose that is the option that you have to weigh if they were to impose any strike. That Iran could then, when backed into a corner, lash out. But to answer your initial question, I think we'll still be speaking about America and Iran, even though in Trump's world you just never know.
You never know for sure. Thomas, pleasure.
Thanks
very much indeed. Thomas Conway of the Nina Guardian. News and information is coming up.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome along to the final hour of Tip today. 1800 938 007. Now, we're just speaking to Thomas Conway about global news, and US President Donald Trump has dominated global headlines in recent weeks and months following the United States' controversial move to intervene in Venezuela and arrest President Nicolás Maduro, as well as remarks concerning potential plans for Greenland as well. Now, these developments have prompted many to reconsider plans about emigrating, for example, to the United States amid growing concerns about political uncertainty. But human rights lawyer John Honey, who lived in the US for many years indeed, joins me now live from France. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, Fran. Nice to speak with you again.
And good to talk to you as well, and good to hear your voice on the radio again, John. You've worked in the States, but you have said, and you were telling Leanne this, that you have zero intention of going anywhere near that banana republic at this point. I presume that's because of Mr. Trump and his policies, is it?
Well, yes. I think that is the straw that broke the camel's back in many ways. But listen, before we begin, Fran, I just want to say something here. I'm aware of two situations of people outside of the US who have made comments about things that are going on that have attracted the interest of the US government. Let's just call it that. One was critical. One, to the surprise of the person, was received a favourable response. So I have no doubt that if we talk today about things that are not liked by the current administration, that could potentially put me on a watch list. But luckily for you and our listeners today, I don't have any problem sharing my opinion. So I just thought I'd flag that up before we get started. But Fran, my time there, I worked with an organisation that was dealing with death row appeals and prisoner class action lawsuits, predominantly in the states of Alabama, Georgia, and Louisiana. And it gave me an insight into the country that generally those of us that just go on holiday over there don't really get to see. When we think of America, we think of California, Hawaii, Florida, yes, New York, New England, but we don't know what's really going on down in the flyover states and in the deep South. That's one thing. But I was, happy enough to go there. I went back to the States several times after that. But I think things that have been happening since 2020, when the first times Trump was started talking about the only reason he would lose the election that year would be if there was fraud going on, and then the events that led up to the 6th of January, and now what's been happening since his return. For me, no, it's just no-go. And indeed, in a couple of months' time, I will be turning 60 and was planning a big trip with my wife, which was going to take us through America. But we abandoned that after he got elected last year.
What Donald Trump is doing is quite overt, John. I mean, it's very easy to see what he's doing, and he plays to it, and it seems to be enjoying the power that he has. But is it not fair to say that, that there's been toppling of regimes going on by the United States for the last 60 years or so, but it's been done covertly by the likes of the CIA and that. In other words, when Mr. Trump talks about making America great again, I really don't know what period of time he's talking about.
Well, there's two things to unpack there, Fran. Firstly, I do think there was a sweet spot in American history after the Second World War. No doubt that the country was fairer. And I know they had the Korean War going on and we were going into the Vietnam War, but I think it was a fairer country all round. There was the civil rights movement. Things were happening. You had the Voting Act of 1965, which made an attempt to ensure that First Nations people and people of colour were allowed to vote equally the same as white people. So I think that was the sweet spot. But you go back 100 years in the interwar years, America was not a great place. Starvation was rampant. Poverty was just, again, rampant. And it was not a fair society. And then after the Second World War, I think it led the way. And I think they could call themselves a democracy for many of us to look up to. albeit that, again, I'm conscious of the fact that we could have people here of colour who would be saying that wasn't necessarily their experience, but things were going forward. As for regime change, you're absolutely right. And let's be honest, we can't just look at an isolation at the US. This has been happening across many, many countries. Russia's doing it now. China's been doing it. Britain has obviously been doing it, and the European powers. But there's something different about the way the Americans are doing it now. Those people who may know a little bit of South American history may well be aware of Operation Condor, which sought to dismantle democratic governments in Chile, Argentina, and Brazil. And we know what they were doing in Cuba. But now there's something much, much more pernicious about what they're doing. And we have to look at it in the light of what Russia and China are doing. It's a return to the days of imperialism.
Yes.
And it's all about one thing now. It's about the oil and other rare earth minerals. My wife's Canadian, so they will tell you talk to Canadians, they're worried about their health and safety because of the fact they've got all the water. But the actions now that are being done by Trump they're twofold. They're firstly demonizing and trying to create enemies, which America has always done. It's always had an enemy. It's been on a war footing since the Second World War. So it's always looking to trigger its economy and go off and get involved in a war. Korea, Vietnam spring to mind. But I would think the biggest worry for Americans and for those living in America is the growing sentiment used by the Trump administration of domestic terrorism. And for that, we're not looking at people like those that were at Waco and things like that. We're talking about people who may be opposing the government of Donald Trump, who may not fall into what he considers to be American. And the efforts now that are being taken to minimize those people. And we look at the woman who was killed last week in Michigan,
Yes.
who straight away was called a domestic terrorist. But what was she doing? She was merely demonstrating and exercising her rights to demonstrate against things that she was unhappy about.
Well, and of course, you know what ICE are saying about this, that, she deliberately attacked the agent with her car. And you look at these, the jury is out on some of the videos, I suppose, that are out there at the moment. So she did, in her way, make an attack on an officer of the state for counter-argument.
With a gun pointed at her,
Yeah.
Frank.
Yeah.
This is the other thing now. And maybe, I would ask your listeners to go and try and listen to the words of a senator by the name of Elisa Slotkin, who gave a speech before Christmas about this growth of the domestic terrorism and identifying homegrown threats, which ultimately, I think we have to look at the fact that there is the midterm elections coming up later in the year. And it may well be that there are going to be a rebound against Trump, and we might well see him become the lame duck president the last 2 years if he loses those. So we're already seeing efforts in play by his administration to abuse those people that would be against him. There is an executive order that's gone out now which seeks to stigmatize people that he perceived, not what the government or the people perceive, but what he perceives as people being anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-Christian, anti-family, and showing hostility towards them. In the year that he's been in power, he started criminal investigations against 17, 18 people. I think this morning we read that Jerome Powell now is in his sight screen. US law firms that were involved in the litigation against him during the 4 years were all targeted as well. So it's a playbook whereby he's trying to firstly kind of come down hard on his opponents, but send a message to anyone else. If you go against me, then you will have the full wrath of the federal government going against you. What that is, Fran, that is not a democracy. That is a dictatorship that is in play. And we saw that for all to see. And I don't think you're quite right. We can debate the situation in Michigan last week, but we saw how close that country was to toppling on the 6th of January, 2021. And but for Mike Pence, and I wouldn't say he's my favorite politician, but for him standing up for what was right, that country would have toppled on that day. 100%.
What about the Democrats, John? I mean, where's Obama? Where's Clinton? They're remarkably silent, are they not?
They're sleeping at the wheel, the Democrats, and they have been sleeping at the wheel for 4 or 5 years now. Now, I can't quote this, and you know, it's just something I have picked up on along the way. When Obama's term was finishing the second time, it was Biden that was due to run. He was going to run, but they went for Hillary Clinton, which was a mistake.
Yeah.
Biden would have walked that election. Trump would have lost, and then he would have gone back to hosting his TV show, and then, you know, we would have carried on. But when Biden came back and beat him in the second election, he was way too old. And the Democrats had 4 years before the last election to get their house in order and get the person lined up that was going to run against Trump, because he was going to run again. That there was no doubt about, because, you know, he couldn't let that stain on his reputation of having lost. So they had 4 years to do this, and they left it till 100 days before, and they put someone in. And with the greatest respect to America, I don't think they're ready for a woman president yet, albeit that they are probably many, many great women that could be president and do a far better job than any of the men. But they left it too late. Secondly, the Democrats fought the election on issues that were not important to American people. I don't doubt transgender rights are important to 200,000 people of the transgender community, but that's not what you're going to win an election on in America. And they fell asleep at the wheel, and Trump was able to go there and start saying, oh, gas is expensive, we're being overtaken by foreigners. And that's what played. And they fought the election, because the American elections are not won across states. They are won in small counties. And it may well be that in one swing state, 3 or 4 counties swing it within the state. And they fought in those counties, and the Democrats were asleep. The Democrats have got one job in 2026, and that is to win the midterms and then wrestle back the power. I'm not sure that those elections will go ahead, because I suspect that the way that he's teeing up his ICE agents across the country is that he will invoke the Insurrection Act if he thinks he's going to lose, play it out on the TV, trigger some sort of incident that he would then justify to bring his troops onto the streets and say that we can't have the elections because it's just not safe. That's also given the fact that I said about the executive order that he's put out before Christmas, which again potentially would allow him to say, oh, I think certain groups are terrorists, and it could be the Democrats. He could even go as far as making it difficult for them to raise money, to run a viable opposition within the states that are having these elections. And so it is an extremely difficult time. And so for the Democrats, they've got to box clever. They've got to box clever. I wouldn't run with a Clinton. I wouldn't put a Clinton out there, but Obama still has currency, and Obama needs to be kind of there and speaking up and speaking out.
There's so much else going on that it's almost mind-boggling. And I'm thinking of Greenland here. I'm thinking of Europe's play there. I'm thinking of NATO potentially protecting itself against a member of NATO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, there's ludicrous stuff going on, is there not?
Well, look, Greenland is about resources. Canada will be about resources, but Greenland, well, we'll say belongs to Denmark. We'll use that phraseology, but it's part of NATO. It's already in the club. You don't need to take it over. The thing with Venezuela, he's gone after him because he says he's a drug dealer. Okay, all right. But where do we stop? There are plenty of leaders on the world stage that are criminal. We're not going after them. What Venezuela is a play for their oil, but it's also trying to wrestle back some sort of power from the BRICS nations, okay? And also the fear that if the BRIC nations suddenly start saying we're not going to start using the dollar anymore, we're going to use a different currency than the petrodollar, then that really would impact the US economy. But now, as I said earlier, we're in a period of imperialism, and or I'm sure anyone would just turn around and say, and I'm not the only one saying this, it's like 1984. The Americans are going for that stretch of land down through all the way from Greenland down to South America. China has got the rest of Asia in its back pocket, and I'm sure people in Taiwan are equally worried now as to their safety should China just sail across the South China Sea and take that. We've seen that then playing out in the South China Sea, as far as the Philippines, a country I've lived in, sailing their ships very close, taking over small pieces of land and putting airstrips on it. And now you've got Russia seeking to come up to the door of Europe and down through and into the Middle East. So that leaves Africa to play. So what will Europe do? Will Europe suddenly decide, well, we need to have some sort of skin in the game, some sort of access to utilities and resources, and start becoming the colonial powers down in Africa as well? It's a horrendous time for the world to be living in, and really we don't need it.
It's just fascinating. Is there any grouping within the Republicans who are saying, whoa, this is just going too far? Is there any grouping within the Republican Party?
To be honest, Fran, I'm not aware. I think there are enough that are uneasy about it, but they're too scared to come up and speak out because of the reaction of the MAGA movement against them. I can't remember the lady's name, but I'm sure your listeners will. There was I think she was in Georgia, and she spoke up and spoke out, and boom, bang, straight back in on her that she's anti-American, she's this, she's that, and the other. So that's the way it is now. If anyone does speak up and speak out, even from within the Republican Party, then they're going to be jumped on. You look at how Ted Cruz, even J.D. Vance, has had stuff in the past where he was criticizing Trump, and boom, he's back in the tent now because they're all sucking up to him. They're all too scared to speak up and speak out. So it's a very, very dangerous time in there. And I think for us, not living in the US or wanting to go to the US, the fear is that of contagion. Look what's happening in Argentina. Look what Bolsonaro was trying to do. Trump saying that if the Argentinians didn't vote for Malia, then that would cause him difficulties in funding them and their programs over there. And we're seeing this happen more and more, that leaders are now kind of taking their cue from the Trump playbook on how to become a dictator. And I did say to Leanna, call it a banana republic, because that's the type of thing that he's doing that is done in banana republics, where you end up with someone being in power for 30, 40 years, handing it down to one of their own choices, partly because they've created so much power for themselves that they're fearful that if they lose the power themselves to an opponent, that power can then be used against them when they're no longer in office. And that's the world we're living in, Frank.
It's very frightening indeed. Can I finally ask you, John, and briefly, if you would, climate change and what's happening there, and almost a reversal in a lot of ways in terms of how it's viewed. What would you have to say on that, John?
I think there's two camps. There are those of us who believe it because we've seen it and we notice it and we feel it, and then those who are deniers. Those who like me, who believe that climate change is a very real thing, have got something on our side called science. Those that don't have it seem to kind of rely upon fuzzy science at best. I think Trump himself has said, "Oh yeah, but the world kind of heats up and warms down, and so on and so forth." But the fact is, this time round, it is man-made. COVID taught us, if nothing, it taught us one thing about how a world that wasn't polluting and using fossil fuels changed. For the first time, people in Delhi could see the Himalaya. The air that we breathed was that little bit better. I was living in Qatar at the time, and Qatar is a highly polluted country. But even the air there felt different. So we are living at a very difficult time. We also have to look at climate change from the way that we use the resources of the earth. And one of those that is critical is how we produce our food. The earth's topsoil is no longer now as effective as it was X number of years ago. And indeed, there are those people that work in that area who will tell you that the topsoil's ability to produce nutritious food is in decline and may not be producing enough food over the course of the next 50, 60 years. We then can link in the way that we live, and we're flying around and so on and so forth, to how we have the possibility of greater dangers from pandemics and so on and so forth. We always have a pandemic. Every 100 years we have a pandemic. We had the Spanish flu, we go back to the Black Plague. But we also run so many risks with disease because of the way we move around, the way we treat the animals of the earth as well, and the consumption of animals, which also kind of causes us problems. It's a time for serious thinking and action. My biggest fear when it comes to these things, Fran, is that it's a little too late in the day, and the actions that now need to be taken on climate change require serious thinking, and that isn't there, much less the will to take the action to do something about it.
Most interesting conversation. John, we appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for coming on with us.
My pleasure, Fran, and a happy new year to you and all our listeners.
Many happy returns to you and your family as well. Thank you. That's John Honey there. John's a human rights lawyer, living in France at the moment, spent many years indeed working with people on death row in the United States, and also has Tipperary connections as well. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck On. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck On. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Well, this is a great piece, guys. I've always been, for the most part, on a Trump supporter, but the move on Greenland and the risk of hurting NATO, a step too far as I'm concerned. Also, the ICE agent should be up for murder, says one of our listeners. Towards the end of the conversation then with John, we were speaking about climate change and the like. Some of what John was saying annoyed one of our listeners who said that's not climate change, that's pollution refuction. I've never come across that word before, so I'll have to rush and look it up and see what happens. All right, then, let's cheer ourselves up. Let's talk about sport, and glad to be joined as usual by our sports editor Paul Carroll from our Nina studio. Good morning to you, Paul.
Morning, Fran. How are you?
I'm well indeed, but where else do we start? Only Upperchurch Strumban and that amazing victory.
Yeah, it was unbelievable stuff up in Croke Park on Saturday. One of the most most chaotic games of hurling I've ever seen or got to commentate on. It was back and forth. The game actually started with Upperchurch kind of dominant in a kind of easy enough fashion. They weren't overextending themselves at all, and they found themselves 6 points up before half time. And next thing, Toreen just rattled off 5 points in about 3 minutes to go in half time, a point down, and it felt that all the momentum was with Toreen in this intermediate club hurling final. And the second half started, Toreen got the first couple of points, and Upperchurch found themselves a point or two down, and it kind of felt they really needed something to happen for them to kind of spark them back into life. And fortunately for them, it came in the form of a Conor Fahy goal in the second half, and the introduction of both Paddy Phelan and Jack Butler off the bench. They really kind of sprung the game back in Upperchurch's favour. But Toreen, really, really good team from Mayo. They've been in the final back in 2023 when they were beaten by 2 points against Munaleen of Limerick, and they've been thereabouts at this stage. So they didn't panic in Croke Park at all. A lot of those players would have been played in Croke Park, dozens of times, maybe with Mayo and with Toreen before, maybe not dozens, but plenty of times more than the Upperchurch lads. And it came down to a free in the last puck of the game in normal time. Upperchurch were down by a point, and Gavin Ryan stepped up from just outside his own 45 and absolutely nailed it between the two uprights and over the bar. That brought the game into into extra time, and in the extra time period, Conor Fahy got another goal, Paddy Phelan got a goal, Paul Shannon's goal with about 4 minutes to go put them 10 points up, and the game was over. Paul Shannon's goal put them 10 points up, and that was it, surely. And he kind of hurt his hamstring, I think, in the process, or maybe cramped up in the process of scoring the goal. And as he walked off to the sideline, you know, it was a celebratory kind of feeling when he was walking off. All the Upper Church supporters were standing up and clapping. There was, you know, just over 2 minutes to go. They were 10 points up in the game. And then 60 seconds later, Toreen have scored 2 goals. So 2 goals went in, one from that puck out, landed around the edge of the square. They pulled on it first time. The puck out went back out from Upper Church into a Toreen man's hand. He sent it to the edge of the square and it was flicked into the back of the net.
Wow.
They get a point from a free, and it's a 3-point game in a flash, and Upper Church are defending for their lives on the edge of their own square. Keith Ryan gets a really important flick out for a 65, and then that 65 drops into the edge of the square. It's batted out, and finally it's the full-time whistle, and Upper Church are All-Ireland champions. So it was just chaos, Fran, is the word I can only use to describe it. But what a win for Upper Church Drumban. They're the only second ever Tipperary team to win the All-Ireland Intermediate Club Hurling Final. The other one was Killadangan back in 2005, but that was in Semple Stadium. This was up in Croke Park, and just what an occasion for all those players that got to play on Saturday. Like, that is the dream for any club hurler. You know, they were the envy of every other club around Tipperary, particularly every other Premier Intermediate club around Tipperary, looking on Saturday thinking, God, that could be us. You know, you think of the likes of Ballina, who had Upper Church knocked out of the county championship with about 60 seconds to go up in Kilcommon back in September, and a Gavin Ryan free that day dropped into the back of the net with one of the last pucks of the game, and if that didn't go in that day, Upper Church would have been out at the group stages. So it just shows kind of the beauty of sport, that one little moment up in Kilcommon back in September can lead to one of the most magical day in Upper Church Drumban's history in Croke Park on Saturday evening. So absolutely delighted for them. They've had a lot of tough days in recent years, in finals and mid-finals and things like that. So a huge win for Upper Church.
We could even hear the celebration down in Anacarty, Paul.
I don't think it's ended. I doubt it'll end anytime soon.
I think you could be right about that. Now, Tipperary senior hurlers, a difficult sort of an outing in Tralee yesterday.
Yeah, they beat Kerry in the Munster Hurling League 116 to 1-7. It was a really just awful day down in Tralee. It was milling rain, winds, cold January conditions, so not conducive to a game where you're going to put up a big score. And Tipperary, if they wanted to get through to the Munster Hurling League final, would have had to win that game by 38 points. But I think the conditions alone, never mind Kerry's good performance yesterday, the conditions alone, you're not going to win a game by 38 points in that kind of howling wind and rain. But Tipperary were actually down by a point at half-time, and they had a strong team lined out. I think 8 or 9 of the lads started in the All-Ireland final, so it was a bit of a surprise that Tip were down by a point at half-time, but they got it back together in the second half. Oisin O'Donoghue with a goal, and he actually scored 3-5 for UL in the Fitzgibbon Cup last week, so he's in goal scoring form, which is great to see. He scored the goal, and Andrew Ormond got a couple of points. Jack Leamy come on and got a couple of points. Jake Morris likewise as well, and Tip went on to win 116 to 1-7, so not enough to get into a Munster Hurling League final. So next up for Tipperary is going to be Galway on Saturday week. I think is at the 24th. In Semple Stadium against Galway in the starting national.
Is there some injury though, Paul?
Yeah, Brian McGrath went off injured in the first half, so he tried to continue, so he was just taken off moments after, so maybe not too serious, so we'll keep an eye out on that. And the big injury news was Shane Brophy from the Nina Guardian reporting that Alan Tynan will miss the league with a broken collarbone, and also Ronan Maher won't play until halfway through the league. He got some surgery off-season, so he'll just take a little bit of time to get up to speed. So with Ronan Maher injured, I in my own head had kind of pictured Brian McGrath getting a lot of game time in the league, maybe in that centre-back position, so it'll be interesting to see if he can be fit in time for Galway in 2 weeks' time. But that's up next for the Tipperary senior hurlers, who will probably name their panel in the next week as well for the National Hurling League.
Well, we don't have as much time as we would usually have, but let's mention the Harty Cup, because 2 Tipperary teams there, Paul.
Yeah, Thurles CBS and Nina CBS will meet in the Harty Cup semi-final. That's going to be next Saturday at 1 p.m. The venue yet to be decided, but always good to have Tipperary teams competing in the back end of the Harty Cup. The other semi-final will be St. Joseph's Tulla against St. Flannan's of Ennis. Flannan's beat Our Lady's Templemore on Friday in the quarter-final. Our Lady's Templemore right in that game all the way through. Flannan's got a couple of goals in the second half to swing it back in their in their favour, and Flannans went on to win that game. So Nina against Thurles next Saturday, going to be a huge game. It will be live here on Tipp FM as well, friend.
Right, big week for Clonmel High School as well.
Yeah, Clonmel High School in the Kearney-Vwery. So this is the football equivalent of the Harty Cup, the Senior A Munster football competition. They're in the quarter-final. They're against Clonakilty Community College of Cork. That's on Wednesday at 1:30 in Páirc Uí Rinn. So we wish all in Clonmel High School the very best of luck there in that one.
I know there was plenty of camogie happening as well, but as I said, we don't have time to go through the detail. But we do have a new professional darts player.
Yeah, unbelievable stuff over the weekend, friend. Nina's Stephen Rosney earned a PDC tour card at Q School in Milton Keynes over the weekend. A week-long tournament, over 391 players competed for just 13 tour cards that were on offer, and Nina's Stephen Rosney finished in 4th place on the order of merit on the last day yesterday, so that earned him that tour card. So for the next 2 years he has eligibility to enter all PDC professional tournaments and earn ranking money and things like that. So really exciting times ahead for Nina's Stephen Rosney. And unfortunately Dylan Slevin from Bursacane was also in action out there. He was trying to regain the tour card that he lost last year. Unfortunately wasn't able to do so on this time of asking. But for Nina Stephen Rosney, as I said, friend, really exciting times ahead to have a Tipperary player and a Nina man on the PDC Pro Tour.
Well, that's for sure. More disappointment for Munster in the rugby, Paul.
Yeah, really frustrating one, friend. They were beaten by Toulon 27 points to 25, but Munster were down by 9 points. Not much really going their way with 15 minutes to go. But then all of a sudden, Jack O'Donoghue gets a try and Tom Farrell goes in for another try. Jack Crowley kicks a brilliant conversion, and Munster found themselves a point up, or 2 points up, a point up even with 5 minutes to go. And then Toulon got a really, really soft penalty. There's no two ways about it. In front of the post, just outside the 22. Really, really soft one. The pundits that would know an awful lot more about it than me were complaining that it was a very, very soft penalty, which pretty much decided the game. But Munster got away with a losing bonus point at least, because they held Toulon up on the line at the very end. So next up for Munster is Cast in Thomond Park. That's on Saturday evening.
All right, I must leave it there, Paul, but thank you so much for your time. Of course, you have all of the sporting details and results tonight on Extra Time, just after 7 o'clock with our own Roland Quirke. We'll take a break. We're back with more in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Dad, who's Nissan?
Who?
Nissan. Uncle Pork said Nissan. There's a mighty deal on his cool new car.
Nissan. His new Nissan. Oh yeah, he did get a mighty deal.
Uncle Porg is right. Get 4K your way today. Choose a €4,000 finance contribution or a 4K trade-in bonus on a new Nissan. It's a mighty deal, however you say it. See nissan.ie for details. Nissan. Defy ordinary. Terms and conditions apply.
Call to your authorised Nissan dealer in the Premier County. Donal Ryan Motor Group, Nina.
Sticks and stones and stitches and sprains, falls and fractures and bumps, breaks and burns. When they happen to you, you'll get the right care at Nina Injury Unit or Casual Injury Unit. Whether you need an X-ray, a plaster cast or wound care, our specialists can help you feel like yourself again. You also don't need an appointment. So visit hse.ie/injury units for our opening hours and who we can treat. From the HSE.
No two student journeys are ever the same. With 7 campuses and endless opportunities, TUS helps you find the path for you. Real skills, real results. That's why TUS graduates are the most employable in the country. We are TUS. We don't just learn, we do. Visit tus.ie.
Thinking solar? Think prosolar.ie. Trusted solar experts working with Tipperary farms and businesses. Engineer-led advice, quality installation and aftercare that lasts. Pro Solar. Solar made simple at prosolar.ie.
There's plenty of deals to stock up on this week at Dunnes Stores. Mix and match any 3 for €30 on selected Pampers Jumbo nappies or pants. Or pick up 7-Up Pepsi and Club Orange 12-pack range, now €7 each. And enjoy a high-protein offer with Fulfill 15-pack range, now just €25 each. That's just €1.67 per bar. Plus, save more with your 10 off 50 voucher. Dunnes Stores, always better value. Terms and conditions apply. Vouchers can be used on next grocery shop. DRS applies.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007. If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007.
Glad to be joined by our relationships expert, Susan O'Donoghue. Good morning to you, Susan.
Good morning, friend.
And good to see you. You're going to talk to us today about what I think is a very big topic and a big issue, which is loneliness.
Yeah, and it affects so many people in Ireland. 1 in 5, they report now, this is true research. So that's 20% of us. It's huge. It's absolutely
How do you define it, though, Susan?
Okay, so I was thinking this morning, what is loneliness, right? And I suppose it describes how someone feels when they lack meaningful or social or emotional connection. So it's about relationship, isn't it? And loneliness, like, there's a big difference in being alone and being lonely. And I suppose Gabor Mate, do you know Gabor? He's
sure,
Canadian.
yeah.
He would describe it as lonely or being alone. We know being alone is a fact. We can embrace and make decisions about it. So that's kind of a conscious thing, right? So lonely has an emotional charge to it. So when I'm lonely, there's lots of feelings around it.
Yes.
There's sadness, there's, upset.
So it's not about being alone particularly?
No, they're two totally complete different things. And for me, I often wonder, that word loneliness, like, I suppose a couple of years ago, the revelation came to me a good couple of years ago now that I need to take responsibility, not have to, there's the unconscious again. I need to take responsibility for my own well-being. I need to take responsibility for my behaviours, for my feelings, for my responses, for my reactions. That they're mine. I need to own them, right? And if everybody did that in the world, God, it'd be a fabulous world, wouldn't it? We'd all answer for our own stuff. But that's not how the world... That's not how we see the world when we're brought into it, because there's so many reactive and unconscious stuff that we all react and push it out there that it's somebody else's fault, or we'll take on somebody else's stuff and blame ourselves for it. So to me, there's a lot of that in being alone as well, because for me, it's about that reflection on loneliness is a feeling.
Yes.
There's lots of feelings around it, right? So our feelings are created by us and for us. We're back to this again now, right?
Yeah.
They're created by us and for us. So what is my loneliness trying to tell me?
Oh, that's very interesting.
Right? This is the way I think of it.
Yeah.
And I would think, how was safety for me growing up, as in relational safety? Was it safe in relationship? Or did I find relationships very unsafe? Yeah, what's stopping me from reaching out? Because it's lovely to say, to me this is like a band-aid now when we say, well, loneliness, you know what you need to do now? You need to get out there and you need to meet people and you need to make connections and blah, 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 blah. But if I'm not in a space to do that, if I'm hugely threatened by a relationship with another, that's going to be almost impossible for me to do.
Right, so when you hear all of the advice, and I know you're not too fond of advice, go and join a card club or go social dancing.
With the best intentions.
Yeah, of course. But that's not going to fix the underlying...
Well, for me, it's what's underneath the feeling, right? And I'm always saying it's not about looking at the surface stuff, because if I look at the surface, I put a Band-Aid on it, but it's still there.
Yes.
That's how I see it. So for me, it's always about getting underneath the feeling. What's this feeling trying to tell me? Because remember, I'm creating it. And if there's anybody knows me, it's me, right? Even if a lot of it is unconscious, there's still a knowing there. I know myself, right? But I want to bring all the unconscious stuff that I've piled in over the years because it was too threatening to look at it. I want to bring it to the surface now, carefully, easily, gently, so I don't get overwhelmed. And a lot of the times, I think, for me personally, myself, I needed support to do that. It was too threatening for me to do that on my own. And the reason I believe for that is, if it's true relationship, that relationships become unsafe. It's true relationships that relationships are going to become safe. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it does.
So the most important relationship to work on is yourself, right? But if I've never had the opportunity to see somebody say, working on their relationship with themselves, then how am I going to know what that looks like? How am I going to know where to start? How am I going to know what to do? So a lot of times, if I have huge fears around relationships, if I have huge blockages around going out there and putting myself out there for fear of what comes back, because we all know it can be real threatening to put yourself out there, right? You have to be really solid in yourself to be able to do that. And if you have that sense of feeling loneliness on top of that, that's hugely upsetting, hugely threatening. Like, you know, the devil we know is better than the devil we don't sometimes. So it just feels safer to wrap ourselves in and just have that sense of loneliness. But remember, that feeling of loneliness keeps coming up to try and motivate us to do something around it, because as people we need connection.
So that's why it's there. So there's a purpose for loneliness.
All behaviour makes sense. Yeah, all our feelings are about us and for us. They're not against anyone else. So a lot of times, you know, you'll have a couple relationship, say, and they won't be able to connect, or, you know, oh, he doesn't get me, or he doesn't, you know, he doesn't understand me, or she doesn't understand me, or she's always talking, and you know what I mean? It's always about her. Right? You hear this constantly the whole time. And I like Carl Jung. I like a lot of his stuff. And he says loneliness does not come from having people around you, but for being unable to communicate the things that are important to you.
It's interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's, do you get me? And if you get me, I feel the connection then.
Right.
Yeah.
If anybody listening is feeling that sense of loneliness and they don't want it, they want to do something about it, what would you say to them? Where would you start?
Right, I was lucky enough that when I started in college, right? Because I'd never gone.
But had you
anyone.
a feeling of loneliness?
I would have had it certain times. I would have felt like I was on my own in certain aspects of my life. Like, I suppose I would have went to America when I was really young, and I never felt like I could go home. Not that it was never said, but they just didn't have it. I never felt like I could ring home and ask for, can you send over money for a flight back? Because they just didn't have it, right? So there was a sense of you were on your own in that, and that was a sense of loneliness, because you couldn't depend on anyone else for support, only yourself.
But is that homesick? Is that a different...
No, that's not homesick. Homesick is missing somebody at home, or missing a relationship, or missing a connection face to face. This is more like feeling like you're on your own with this one now. Yeah?
Okay.
There's no point in asking anyone else, because it's not going to happen. Because, see, that was my experience growing up.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does,
So
yeah.
it depends on your story. It depends on how your story was for you. Did you have a lot of people in your life who wanted to hear you, who wanted to listen to you, who had an interest in what you had to say as a child?
But a lot of people might have been in that situation, but it didn't manifest itself in loneliness, if you know what I mean.
There's a certain sense of loneliness around that, because you don't have any support in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You don't have anybody who you can ring, or anybody who you can depend on for it. So you have to become self-reliant, but it's a pseudo. It's a kind of a pseudo confidence that you get around, oh, I'm going to take this on, and I'll have no issue getting money together to go home, sure, I'll have to do it myself, sure, that's just the way, this kind of sense of that, rather than I know I can do it.
Yes.
I'm okay with this, I've got this. And if I do need to ask somebody for help, I will be able to do that as well. Because what happens when you go the first way is that you end up never asking for help.
Yeah.
Because to ask for help is a sign of failure.
And in years gone by, people might have used the church, for example, where this is concerned, because it might have given them solace of some kind. That's not there for an awful lot of people now. Is that part of the issue, do you think?
I think there's a lot to do with it. I think, I know that there was a lot of issues with the church, and I know there was a lot of stuff went on, but it did give that sense of belonging and that sense of connectedness, that we all had a goal, that was similar.
Because I still envy that. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I would say the same. Yeah. I would say that, but I envy it in the sense of, it's great to have that sense of belief. But I don't have that sense of belief. I have a spiritual sense that I think there is something out there. Now, there's lots of people would say there's not. Lots of people would say there is, but they're just specific of what's out there. I don't have a specific, because I don't know. I'd be kind of more curious and wondrous about what it is. And I don't think I'll know until I go there. That's the bottom line. I don't have that sense of faith. I suppose that's what you'd call it, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But I mean, I saw it in action even over Christmas, with local funerals and stuff, how people literally come together.
Yeah, and that's a sense of
unit.
connection.
And
and belonging.
Incredible.
And a sense of love.
The power of it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's
power
huge.
Of it, you know?
That is beautiful that is one thing in Ireland that we do so
Brilliantly.
well. Yeah. But God forbid you should do something wrong in Ireland, or step over, Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're outside the pack then, aren't you?
Yeah, and that's a sense of loneliness.
Yeah.
But should we all know that, like, it's researched beyond, right, that loneliness causes, health problems, it causes emotional problems, mental well-being problems, it causes all sorts of stuff, right? We know that. We know that you have heart problems, you have like immune problems, there's lots of stuff come along with it. And still in Ireland, this really I suppose challenges me sometimes. And I know Mary Butler's a minister for mental health, but we've taken away resources rather than put them in.
I know.
In a time where it's crucial, and I think young people are amazing, right? And I think old people are amazing. I think we're all amazing. But I really think young people are great. And this lack of connection now through social media scares me. Yeah. I think that sense of...
that plays into loneliness.
Yeah, it plays into loneliness.
Yeah.
It like promotes it hugely. And even though they feel like they're connecting to others, and they might be talking to somebody online way more than we'd be talking to somebody face to face, but there's nothing like face to face.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that body language, that intimacy, that sense of that person really gets me, or you know it, but when you sit with somebody.
Where I see that almost every day is the difference between interviewing somebody by phone and like we are here right across the table here. It's totally different.
They're not even they don't even match in any sense of the word. So I suppose that loneliness is a very unique personal thing, and each person's loneliness is unique to them. And it depends on, like, when you said to me, I wouldn't think that would be a loneliness thing now, but I felt loneliness through that.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? So there's a difference. We're all going to feel it differently. But I did feel a sense of aloneness. And of course, Tony Humphreys would always talk about, our Tony now, he would always talk about that we all need to feel alone to get that sense of ourselves. And John O'Donoghue is another big one for that. And I think For Loneliness is one of his poems, and in it he kind of basically talks around how that sense of solitude and being alone.
Yeah, but isn't that conflating? I'm not sure if that's helpful, because it's conflating being alone and loneliness, which are different.
But see, I think we need to get that sense of being alone to reflect on.
Yeah.
And that sense of loneliness. What is it for us, and how is it? Because I was on about reflection the last day I was in. It's about reflection. It's about looking at, oh my goodness, what's coming up for me? What's this feeling telling me? Where is it coming from? Who am I with when I feel it, or who am I not with when I feel it? Who do I feel it with when I think about them most? Or, that kind of sense of that. Because I think too, the romantic side of it can be, it can be very unconscious, So I think there's a lot of work to be put into it. But it's about coming back to yourself the whole time and asking the questions, what's my need in this?
Yes. Yeah? And is there a personality type that is prone to loneliness and melancholy, and that's that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, in the research it shows that young people and people over 50. But I think that's because people in the middle are just, they don't have time for all. You have children, you have to get 5 minutes by yourself would be a privilege sometimes. Do you know what I mean? But it doesn't matter how many people are around you, you can still feel alone.
Yes.
So I wonder, are they mixing that up sometimes when they do the research? Because
I think so.
Yeah, for me, it's what's really underneath it. Because I think at certain times we all feel lonely.
Yeah. And have you seen people come out of that feeling of loneliness if they address the, can I call them core issues? Or?
I think so. I think that's the only way you come out of it, is to address the deeper issues. I think you can... It's different on, there's different levels of it too. There's chronic loneliness where it's been happening for years and years and years, and that's harder to come out of then because now I've, this has become a habit for me. So it's about breaking that cycle, but it's also about looking at what's the deeper stuff going on in here. Because I don't want to put a Band-Aid on it. Because if I do, it might look all right for a couple of weeks and come back again.
And can I, sadly I'm almost out of time, but there's something I wanted to pick you up on. You spoke earlier on about taking responsibility for our actions and our thoughts, I presume, and everything else. If you do that, though, and you come across something that says, okay, I have to take responsibility for that, but boy, was I a bad person there. How do you deal with that? Because then you have to say, look,
okay,
I
when you
acted
say a bad
appropriately,
person there, right? All behaviour makes sense, okay?
Yeah.
To the person, who it's happening to, I might look at some of your behaviours, and unless I sit with you and hear your story, I might not think that it makes sense.
Yes.
I might think you're being totally random and crazy and off the cuff. But when you actually sit with somebody and listen to them, I guarantee you, if we listen to ourselves, we will get a sense of, oh my God, sure, that was the best I could do then.
Yes.
And that's what happens to
knowing what I knew at that point.
That's the best I could do, because I think we're always doing our best. And even through, the worst of things, like you hear people doing horrendous things and, and you think, oh my God, just lock them up and stick them away. If we do that, we're not looking at the deeper issue. We're just putting a Band-Aid on it again. And the deeper issue is, how do people get into such situations like that where they feel unconsciously maybe that they've no other option?
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
If people want to talk to you, how can they do that, Susan?
It's 086 3676256 or info@emotionalwellbeing.ie. Thanks.
All right, great to see you as always. Thanks, Susan. That's it for me. Leanne produced, Ali looks after content. Stephen has the time tunnel on the lunchtime show, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Look after yourselves, won't you? Bye-bye.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.